Hey guys, I'm Dan, a Chicago-based cinematographer, and I'm here making a YouTube video. I'm not a YouTuber. As you could tell, I just have a little light in the corner there. I got spotlight right there. Like I said, we're not YouTubers. But, you know, I figured I wanted to make a video because I haven't seen many detailed comparisons between the Canon C80 and the C70. And basically, I want to go into the crazy little nitty-gritty details that nobody's going to talk about. We're talking power cords, we're talking clip placement for cable management, and all the other things, including one big flaw that I noticed with the C80. I've been using the C70 for the past 2.5 years or so, putting over 670 so hours on the camera. What we're going to do is we're going to shoot one scene. It's like a sample to showcase both cameras back to back to see the differences between the new sensor of the C80 and the beloved DGO sensor of the C70, as well as testing both slow motion comparisons, seeing the full frame and super 35mm crop on the C80 to compare it to the C70, and a few ergonomic changes. Miguel, show the lovely people who's filming this YouTube video today. Yep, awesome. We're a bunch of YouTubers. JK, we're not. We're actually professionals. We've been working in the industry for many years. And so I'm not just a person who's going to glamorize and show you the C70 or C80 in this case. Oh, check out this thing with some nice purple backlights and all this other shit that YouTubers do. I'm a working professional. I need the camera to work for me. It is my moneymaker. I need it to be good. So I'm going to look at it from that perspective. I'm not going to glamorize anything. I'm just going to say it how it is, and I'm going to show the real comparison that other YouTubers are just not showing enough of. I paid for the C80 with my own money. I'm not paid by Canon. I was not endorsed by anyone. Obviously, I'm just someone who wanted to upgrade my C70 to the C80 because why wouldn't you at this point? It seemed like a crazy, amazing value. This is one of those absurd details that I just noticed. Figured I'd mention it. Doesn't really affect anything, but here we have, this is the old charger. It has a right angle power connector, and for some reason they decided to go straight this time. That's just something I noticed. As most will point out, the C80 is just a hair taller than the C70, but it does weigh a little bit more. This is the C70's top handle. I never really complained about it, but up until we have the C80's handle, and that felt way better to hold. And a really huge benefit is, on the C70, you would lose the hot shoe when you screw on the handle, but on the C80, they kept the hot shoe separate. So you could use this for miscellaneous items, receivers, timecode boxes. Well, if you've worked with the C70 long enough, you know that the hinge is terrible. This one happens to be, because I'm borrowing this camera from work, and it's still very new, so it seems to work fine. Give it a month or two of use and the hinge will start to wobble. There's that. Now the C80. Promised to fix that. We'll see. Apparently has a reinforced hinge. Only time will tell, but as you can see, it's a little bit of a difference. It actually locks into place just a little bit. Takes just a hair bit more effort to open than the C70, but not really much. And the hinge definitely feels a little bit tighter, and the gap on the hinge is a little bit tighter as well. The tolerance is a little bit tighter, so maybe they actually made an improvement. As you can see here, the gap is a little bit bigger on the C70. I don't know how well that's going to hold up in the long term, and I may make a follow-up in case if something does change with the C80 hinge. They still have a little bit of lube on there, you see? See the white?
Do they really?
Yeah, the white is like lube. I never wiped it. From factory lube. Canon lube. Oh, did you see that?
Yes, sir.
There's a little notch right here. Interesting. Wonder what that's for. Something I noticed about my particular unit of the C80, I don't know if this is going to be all C80s, if this is part of their tolerances now, but there is a bit of play. You hear that and see that? There's a little bit of play in the battery. I will actually put in the BPA30N, which is the new batteries they have. I'll put it in here, and much less slap. I'm actually putting a lot of force to do this, you know. And I put the battery, the BPA30 from the C70, tiny bit, but not much, right? Now if I put the C70 BPA 30 into the C80, see? It's very similar, but I feel like there's a little bit more slack in the battery plate, a little bit more play. All right, now I'm going to quickly run through just a few physical differences with the camera, starting with some of the cable management. They put it on the handle here since there's no back to the handle anymore, like on the C70. As you can see, they had the audio, for your cabling, a clip here. They decided to put it on the side here. They also have one on the bottom right here as well, next to the DC in, which, as you can see, there's also the DC in port on the C70, same thing. Just something I noticed. And then also now we actually have networking, so you can actually hook this up and actually control things through the Ethernet on the camera. And now we can jump in. They also moved the film plane or sensor plane indicator right there where you could measure from focus. If you're old school like that, they put it here because, and so you can see where it was on the C70, it's right here on the left, but that is because now in this area on the C70, I keep dropping the C70, now in this area, we now have on the C80 what we've all been wanting, the SDI port. That's right, finally, this has an SDI, and I love the location of it because it's very close to the monitor, so you could run a very short cable and it's out of the way. And one thing I hated about the HDMI on the C70 was, and it's still in the same spot on the C80, but I don't have to use it now as much, is when you're hand holding this, it actually hurts my hand quite a bit, this right angle HDMI cable sticking out. It always bothered me when I was handheld shooting before. But now with SDI, I can have the video cable far away from anywhere I would be holding the camera. So I really like the positioning of the SDI port. So right now I want to demonstrate some slow and fast mode differences between the C80 and C70 because that's where I noticed a difference. Even when you set the cameras up to be technically the exact same, there's a slight difference. So let's set up the C80 to be more comparable with the C70. So obviously we have full frame, but we're going to go into super 35mm crop just to have more of an apples to apples comparison, right? Because the C70 natively is super 35mm. We're going to go into slow and fast motion, which I use often for when I shoot a lot of B-roll. And you can go 60. You can also go, and this is actually what bothers me. I'm going to show you in a second here. Look how slow it takes to jump between the frame rates. See, I'm trying to get to 120 or 60 really fast. Look how there's like a delay, right? Now let's look over here on the C70. Same thing, super 35, because that's all we can do. I mean, you can actually crop in even further, but that is the most frame we're going to get. We're going to go into slow and fast motion. Do you see the difference? I can go really quick to 120. Why is there a delay on the C80? I don't know. But that's something I noticed. See, look how fast I'm able to change the frame rate. Oops. You see that, right, Miguel? Yeah. See, look how quick that is. Why is it slow on the C80 to change the frame rate? I don't know. Let me show you one minor difference, but we're going to do it at 60 FPS in slow and fast motion. You're going to look at bit rate here, and it's 160. Keep in mind, the C70 is super 35mm, and it's giving us 160 megabits per second, 4K long GOP, at 60 FPS, right? Now let's look over here at the C80. We're gonna take our sweet time to get to 60. And we're also in super 35mm crop. We're gonna go over, it's 4K long GOP, and you can see, even though our settings are pretty much identical with the C70, for some reason we are getting 150 megabits per second. Same exact file format, media record format, resolution, everything's the same, but we have 150 versus 160. Why? I don't know. So this is actually going to be, besides the bit rate, that's probably more irrelevant. That 10 megabits you'll probably never notice. Could be a difference in efficiency, I don't know. But one part that I will say is an actual genuine downside going into the C80. And this is a very niche scenario that you might be in. But if you happen to shoot and you want to do slow and fast with audio, oftentimes, like if I shoot like wedding B-roll, whatever, and let's say sometimes you want to film slow motion, but you want the audio to also be recorded at the same time, what the C70 will do is record slow and fast clip, but it'll also record audio to either your second SD card or to a separate folder with the exact same clip name on the same SD card if you only have one in there. So it's called slow and fast clip with audio. But you're able to, if I get out here for a second, you'll see the audio waveform going, right? Now let me go back to this. Let's go to 120 FPS. This is all on the C70. See how we still have audio, right? So we're able to record 120 FPS slow and fast with audio. You see that, right? See that, Miguel? Mm-hmm. I'm going to break the fourth wall here. Now let's move over to the C80. We're going to also go slow and fast clip with audio. Also keep in mind, we're super 35mm crop. I want to give it the best case scenario to compare to the C70. We're going to go over to, oh yeah, so let's show it 60 real quick. See, we have the audio, right? You see that? Audio at 60 FPS, just like the C70. But as soon as we go 120, as soon as we go 120, right? This is what I'm getting at. You can't shoot 120 with audio. Why? You tell me, Canon. I'm curious. Why is that? Why can't we shoot 120 with audio? I know it's a weird case scenario, but I'm just curious. Why create a limitation when the C70 clearly was able to do that? One thing I wanted to quickly point out, because some people have been asking on like B&H and other places, what are some of the limitations surrounding 4K 120? So these are settings real quick. XFAVC, 10-bit, 4K long gap. This allows us to shoot 120, which is right here. Not with audio, as I mentioned before, but we are able to shoot in full frame. Bam, full frame 4K 120. And see, no audio. Oh, I'm curious, what's the bit rate on this? 130. Oh, interesting. Did you see that? Interesting, because this is 108. Oh, that's weird. Because look at this. You go to 60 in 3 days, and it's 150. Interesting. This is the biggest ridiculous omission that Canon has made with the C80 compared to the C70, and actually compared to any other Canon cameras. I haven't seen this yet. Please tell me below if you ran into this on any other cameras that Canon makes. Very confused, but here we go. So as you can see, we have the display LUT on, view assist on, we're shooting C-Log 2. See, turn it on and off. You see that, Miguel, right? Mm-hmm. Now we go into playback mode, and let's play back a shot, also shot on C-Log 2. And it's log, right? Okay, but what if I wanted to show somebody this, and I'm on a gimbal, I'm not using an external monitor, whatever, I want to see how this looked. What gives, you know? So where's an option for... so under monitor setup, we go through each one. Nothing, 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 nothing. Well, there is no monitor LUT display toggle on the C80. Literally in the manual. I was on the phone for 2 hours with Canon support. For some reason, they don't have C80s also to test it with, which is very weird. I don't know why I have one, but Canon doesn't. But you're not able to play anything in playback that was shot in log. You're not able to view it through a display LUT, the view assist, as Canon calls it. And here we're going to show you the C70. Perfect example. We shot something in C-Log 2. Look at that. Wow, I can actually see that same clip and how it's going to more or less look like, or at least, you know, make it more pleasing to show a client or somebody looking over your shoulder. Let's say you're not using external monitors because you're on a gimbal or, you know, whatever, anything. I want to preview the shot. Why am I looking at a log image when I could be looking with a LUT? Now, let's say you didn't want this. I totally understand. Maybe this isn't common. Maybe I'm just weird because I want to see it with a LUT. But guess what? Here on page 5, what do we have here, Miguel? What does that say, Miguel?
LUT, LCD.
On or off. So I can turn it off, and now I have what the C80 has, but I can also turn it on, like every damn camera that shoots log. Why does the C80 not have an option? And I checked with Canon. They showed me page 125 of the C80 manual clearly shows that there is no LUT option. It's only on camera mode, but it's not in playback mode. What were they thinking? Am I weird? Please comment below telling me that I'm very weird for wanting to have a LUT, display LUT for the playback when you're watching back your C-Log 2 footage. Am I weird? Am I weird, Miguel? Am I weird for wanting a LUT for that? You shoot Blackmagic. You have no issues.
No, absolutely.
You can put 1 billion LUTs on that thing. And you can view it even when you're not even at home. So one thing that I'm really excited about that they added on the C80 software-wise is now under the quick menu right here, you actually have what's LCD luminance right there. You no longer have to go into the display settings to change the luminance, and there's more granularity in the screen brightness. You didn't have this many steps on the C70, and you can actually go even darker too. So that's pretty cool. I like that. In a moment, you're going to see a scene that we shot demonstrating the differences between the C80 and C70. Since I don't have duplicate lenses for them, I have to end up shooting each shot back to back. One on the C80, then switch to the C70, vice versa, and we keep going until the scene is done, and I'll break it up. First, you'll see the entire scene in its entirety just for context purposes, all shot on the C80, and then we're going to go back, revisit the entire scene, and actually go over a few shots and see the differences between each one back and forth, and my thoughts, and you'll see the behind the scenes of it as well, and you'll hear my thoughts on what I think of the camera in a more production environment. Hell yeah, now you gotta remember to do that somewhere.
Ace to 2, よくない5ベッドそれできるよエースすげえこれはチャンスですチェックそれで救えると思いますか見ておいなんでとなぜ彼は立ってまないのですか今から立たしてもう進みますオッケーあなたの戦術がわかりますここに最後の一撃がある Two pairs, ace and two.
Three of a kind aces.
負けた戻ります
So this is going to be the comparison, same scene broken down, but this time, first shot you see is going to be C80. The very next shot after that is going to be C70. And we're going to keep doing that for every single shot of the film. And we're going to I'm going to pause in a few moments just to give my quick brief commentary because I'm viewing this on a color accurate display and it's not being screen recorded. So it's going to be much harder for you to see this on YouTube. Both cameras are exposed only through the lens, exposed for the exposure differences between the sensor sizes. But occasionally I will switch to super 35mm crop mode on the C80 to match the C70. Then the exposures will be identical in those situations or settings. For the most part, I did color grade this differently for the actual scene, but I got it somewhere relatively close to where I want it. I colored it to the C80 footage, and then all I did was copy the raw camera settings over to the C70. So let's just jump right in. Action. Okay, that was great. Awesome. So we're actually filming here at, as you can see, we're shooting at full frame 4K 120 because we can on the C80. But when we switch to the C70, we're going to be in super 35mm mode because that's all we can do. Right off the bat, the shot is 4K 120 and it's still going to be at 3200 ISO. C80. Now this is the C70 footage. Far noisier in this situation. Again, we accounted for the stop difference between the sensors when we're exposing, just using the lens, and unfortunately this is where the C70 landed with that. Now over here, this is a good example because we were working with red right now is the visual difference here. We'll go to the C80 footage. So the C80 footage, while I would grade this a little bit differently, and I did for the final scene, this you'll notice I didn't correct it even further because I would, but it's just to show you a difference between the cameras. So here when I color graded, I pulled in a little bit more magenta because it ended up being very green, but you can see there's still some green left in the C80 footage because it biases slightly green. And if you've shot on the C70 before and you are familiar with the footage, you know the C70 tends to bias slightly magenta. And this is also using Canon's official C-Log2 LUT as well, just letting you know. So you could see right off the bat with the fingers and the here, there's a little bit more magenta, which in this case makes the reds a little bit more pronounced compared to the C80. But if I just simply tinted this a little bit more magenta, which I would for the final product, to get it looking a little bit closer to what the C70 is right now, but then if I did that and applied it to the C70, C70 would be very magenta then at that point, right? So this is, again, just comparing exact same raw camera settings to each other and just seeing the visual result. The visual result is a difference in tint. So right here, very quickly, this is C80 footage. Sorry. Right here, you'll notice it's getting a little bit dark back there. Purposefully for the demonstration of the cameras, I did not light through that window back there since we did shoot this at night. So if it was actually like a short film, whatever, I would obviously also pump the same color of light, from my key also through that window because it would make sense. If it's like a sunrise or whatever, it's going to also come through. But I didn't want to on purpose because I wanted to leave this all in the very deep shadow to demonstrate shadow detail between the two cameras. Because I'm expecting, based on the DGO sensor, the C70 to pull through a little bit more shadow detail than the C80, just theoretically. But you'll see in just a second. Look, pay attention to the background. So here we're gonna go here. Boom, right away in the background. Right away the exposure lifts just a little bit. I want to say maybe a third stop, half stop. Yeah, maybe not even a half stop, maybe like a third stop. It's very little difference, but it's cleaner, which means we do in fact have a little bit more shadow detail on the C70 than the C80. Not a lot, but it's definitely there, and the noise is far less than the C80 in this shot. A part of the reason why this is a little bit noisier on the C80 than the C70, although it's technically should be the same, the reason why is I put the C80 at a slight disadvantage on purpose to match to the C70 better. And what I did was this is shot in Super 35 mode. So it's actually at 4.3K whatever in RAW. So this is Super 35mm crop mode on the C80, and it matches to the C70. Because the C70 is naturally Super 35mm, right? So technically, that's why the C80 would be, relative to itself, it's going to be a little bit noisier than if I had shot it in 6K. So I already automatically put it at a slight disadvantage. One thing I love about the C80 is, see how I'm shooting handheld, but they actually have a level right here now that you can always have on the display. You see? So I can always see if it's leveled now, which is something a lot of cinema cameras are missing. Cinema cameras. Okay, ready? And action. But see, we can play it back with the LUT on the C70. We can't do that on the C80, which is why I'm not even showing you that footage. Because it's just going to be gray, bland looking until I color it. Very noisy on the C80 on the shadow side here on the left. And also in Miguel's shirt right there, you could see a lot of noise coming through in the C80. Of course, it is raw footage, so there's no denoising happening. For the final scene you saw in the C80, I did denoise everything because I wanted to, clean it up and do exactly what you would do with raw footage. You'd clean it up because there's no denoising happening in camera. So, but for the comparison, obviously I had to leave it denoised like this so you can actually see a good comparison between detail. So you see C80, kind of a little bit darker and a lot of noise, and then you'll see in the C70, boom, right away, cleans up. Basically, yeah, just generally cleans up a little bit here. So we'll be able to extract even more detail or simply denoise less if we need to. The C80 footage is significantly sharper also around the faces and everything where the focus is. Again, I'm seeing this because I'm looking at raw footage graded, but on YouTube you'll probably see this less. But the C80 is noticeably sharper, and I do like that because if I want to soften up an image, I can always use filters, I can always do this in post, whatever. I can always lower the detail if I need to, but if I need to increase detail, it's very difficult to do that with the C70 without artificially sharpening or whatever. So I do like the more organic sharpness of the C80 because we're working with a 6K sensor compared to 4K. So that's just a noticeable difference here as well. There you go. I got to move this way further back because I'm not on full frame anymore with the C80. I'm back on the C70, so got that crop. So I have to go further back just to get the same shot. The crop sensor struggles, man. This one, the tint difference is very noticeable. So this is a little bit closer to what I want. A little more magenta than I would want on the C80, but again, we fixed this in the full, scene. But you'll notice the C70 is far more tinted towards magenta. None of this really matters. The tint difference doesn't actually matter because when you're white balancing in camera or later in post, because we're shooting raw, you can adjust it to whatever you want. I could make the C80 footage look exactly like the C70 footage when it comes to color and white balance, and same goes to the C70. I can make them look exactly the same. But just note, if you are working with both the C80 and C70, you're going to notice a tint difference if you apply the same exact camera raw settings to both cameras. You are going to have to mess with the tint a little bit on both. I think Canon probably made the C80 slightly tinted towards green because everyone can notice that the C70 tints slightly more magenta naturally, so you always had to correct for that in camera or post if you wanted. So I think they probably just simply made it slightly greener on the C80 right off the bat, so you didn't have to do that. Same thing here. And again, when it comes to the detail and the highlights and stuff, extremely similar in the highlights. Very similar. In this shot, it's so similar, it's like hard to tell the difference, really. Yeah. Action.
But it doesn't make sense, right?
It's ridiculous. But
No, my facial expression, does that make sense?
You tell me.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. Yeah, that's a lot.
Here's the C70, so you see I'm much tighter on that. If you look at the actual source, the source is a little bit bigger on the C80, which leads you to believe that there's a little bit less detail. It's picking up a little less. It's blowing out a little bit more surrounding the light that is outside compared to the C80 or C70. The source is a little bit smaller, which means it's picking up just a little bit more detail in the highlights. But again, the difference is so minor. It's blown out regardless. If you're going to have a hot spot, it's going to be a hot spot regardless. C70, C80, doesn't matter. And the edge lighting right here on his face looks exactly the same. So very, very close in terms of highlights. Here, same thing. Now, are you capable of putting it back in the same spot? So go down. I'm rolling already. No, outer frame completely. Your hand. Yep, go up. So I'm going to have to, okay, do it again. Go again. One more time. Go again. I think we got it.
All right.
Now, action. Well, that was way too much. I already discussed this one. I mean, even the highlights on the table, it's such a minor difference. It's like, I might as well say it's the same. But I noticed the C70, while I was shooting, would jump to the background, that bright source right there, and the blinds. It would jump, the autofocus would jump there more often than the C80. The C80 would grab one of their faces. Same thing here, we have more noise on the shadow side of his face. Yep, not really much of a difference here. Yeah, this was 6K, so it had a little less noise. The noise is actually very similar now when it's in 6K. Yeah, so far my impressions. Right now, very hard to say just in camera, especially when the playback, there's no LUT on the C80. So, you know, but the autofocus is very different, I will say. It's hard to say. Like once it grabs it, it's much more reliable. But in some situations, I would say the C70 was a little bit better, and in some situations, the C80 was better. It's very hard to call it at the moment.
Okay.
Next one,
Cameras
real
up.
quick. If only productions move this quickly. It's like, go, next one, go.
A crisscross.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom.
Well, we should
That's changing.
There we go. Well,
Yeah, the only reason we're doing that is because I don't have the same lens.
Yeah.
We only have one of the lenses that I want. Close up of Final Cut. Oh, close up of Adam punching his fist onto the table next to his remaining chips. They start to topple over. This is going to be at, I want to say 120. Let's push a 4K 120 on this. We're already on the C80, but I'll shoot in full frame because you know why, Miguel? You've been part of this.
I don't know why, but please tell the audience.
Oh, okay. It's because the C80 can do full frame 4K 120 for all you questionnaires on B&H's website. Because I saw those questions, man. They're like, does it crop when you shoot slow-mo? No, it doesn't. You know how I know? Because I have it before.
Anybody else?
Canon even has their own cameras. Miguel, can't do it with sound.
That's true.
And then you gotta, look at this. Take my time. Let me get to 120. Look at this. What the hell did they do with this thing? Look at this. I'm still not at 120, guys. Wow, that took a whole minute. Pisses me off, man. Hold on, I'm going to use the new joystick on the C80 to adjust my focus marker. Yeah, baby. Let me change the focus mode. Oops, pressing the wrong button here. There you go. Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
And camera speed, is audio good?
Yep.
Okay, action. Oh, okay, didn't happen, that's fine. Wish it did. Okay. This is a big difference. So this, I remember this shot completely. So when I shot this was when I was able to test. I'm like, you know what, 3200 is just kind of not quite cutting it for exposure. We're quite a bit in the shadow. These chips are blocking a lot of the light coming in through the window. And the way we're positioned, based on the blinds, the light's going further back, right? Like it's lighting up Adam further behind him as opposed to right in front here. So this is a perfect situation where I was able to test the C80's 12,800 native ISO. And I was blown away by how clean this is. For raw footage, you know, because there's no denoising happening, very, very clean at 12,800. And you'll see the C70 just completely fall apart. I would never shoot the C70 at 12,800, but I had to for the sake of this comparison. But I really wanted one shot to at least test it. And there's a perfect example, 4K 120 full frame on the C80, because yes, you can do full frame in 4K at 120. And these are the results. The C80, very clean, very clean. And look at that. Look how much noisier the C70 is in comparison. It's ridiculous. Same thing here. Same exact situation here. I stopped down, of course, to make that work. 12,800. But again, 4K 120 at 12,800. Crazy situation. I would never put the C70 in, ever. But we can do that on the C80. This is just a demonstration of what is possible with the triple native ISO sensor. So, and again, dynamic range, very little difference. So this is a perfect example. You'll see the C70 just falls apart. Also, by the way, shout out to Adam's amazing Japanese dub. He did a fantastic job. Very like One Piece vibes. But anyway, tips. Look at that. Look at that. Holy cow. This is borderline unusable. Not even borderline. This is just a disaster from the C70. But again, this is not something you would do with the C70. Totally understand that. But again, if we're going to go to 12,800 on the C80, I have to show it on the C70. It's just, I have to do it. I have to for sake of comparison. Focus is still good though. It's a little softer as well. Same thing here. It's going to be a little bit noisier on the C70. This too, very clean. This is high ISO situation, 12,800. So we're keeping it that for now. Because again, I really wanted to test that third ISO. I wanted to test it in a crazier environment, very high contrast. And these are the results. So very noisy. on the C70.
2 pairs, ace and 2.
Again, those highlights, pay attention to these highlights. C80. But anyway, that's my in-depth comparison, shot by shot, of this scene in a very ridiculous lighting situation. Ridiculous in the fact that we're pushing into the 2000s in white balance in the camera. So that's already pretty aggressive. I also did, on my own time, pull back a little bit on each shot, highlights and stuff. I didn't see any difference, to be honest with you. But shadows I did. Shadows I did. The C70 shadows are a little bit cleaner, and you have a little bit more exposure out of them. The exposure is a little higher in the shadows, indicating more detail. C80 is not off by a lot, but it's still there. The difference is there. But then as soon as you go to like something like 12,800, it's game-changing. Absolutely no difference. And also, if you're going to shoot super 35mm crop on the C80, it is noisier than the C70 that already has a super 35mm sensor, but for whatever reason, it is still noisier on the C80. If you want a cleaner image than the C70, you shoot full frame, and then that pretty much takes care of that. So, very interesting findings. C70 ran a little more magenta, C80 a little more green. Well, that is my big, long comparison. I hope you were able to sit through that, and that's it.